Welcome to this tutorial, our tutorial number 10. In the previous lesson, we looked at queries and specifically text queries. But remember, previously I had explained and told you that we shall have three categories, where we have the text queries, the number queries, and then the date queries. So in our previous lesson, we looked at text queries, and in this lesson, we are particularly going to look at the number queries, which will also cover recurrences. Now here comes our question that we are supposed to look at tonight, or in this lesson. And we've been told to create a database called current cells 2020. And this is how the database structure should be. These are the field formats that should exist in our table. Remember, we have these fields and these are the formats for their data types. That means when you're creating the data types, we have to ensure that these are the field formats. So we shall go and create our database, like we all know how to create a database, add those fields and then format them the way they are supposed to appear. So here we go. Let's go and create our database. So here is our database created with a name contain cells 2020 and the item table 2020. Then we have all the fields here, but remember these fields have been given a format that we're supposed to edit them with. So when you look at our question, the format for the field for this data type of the item ID is given as SJV dash, and then it should be with those three place values. So remember, these SJV and the dash, which are supposed to be constant, have to be in double quotes to make them constant. That's one. Then for unit price, maybe let's just check in the question. We have this these are the field formats we have. For unit price, it should be formatted as shillings, so that symbol must be displayed. So we go and come to shilling unit price. The format should be SHS, and then with hash, comma, right here it's hash, comma, hash. The hashes here represent what we call the place values for the numbers. Each single hash represents a number, and this comma is the 1000 separator. Then what else are we supposed to change? Remember, for the location, this one is for the date of birth. The format is day, then month, then year. And then finally, for the location, this should be a lookup wizard, so we can create a lookup wizard. We have two, we shall type in. Then we have two options. It's either A or B. Then we move to next, we limit to the list, and then finish. So we go back to our table, we save the changes, and there our table is. So we now go and start populating it using our records that have been given in the table. So now we have our table which is already populated. All our records have been entered, and here we can now be able to start working on our queries that have been asked of us to create. And when we look at the question here, they're asking us to create a query. The first query is to create one which will return items with a quantity above 500 and save it as above 500. So we now go to query, we can create query design, and we add the table. We are going to add all the fields for a meantime. Then we go to quantity because we are dealing with a quantity and it's above 500. So we use the greater than sign. Above 500. That is greater than 500. So we run it, and if you check through the quantity here, you can see that all this is above 500. So we go and save it as above 500 because that's what they told us. We save that one. Then the second criteria is to create one which will return members whose quantity is between 800 and 2000 and save it as between. So we go and create its query design, add our table, add all the fields, and still dealing with the quantity. They have told us between 800, so we write and say between 800 and 2000. I think that's what the question was saying. It's between 800 and 2000. So we come and run this one, and indeed if you see, this is between 800 and 2000. All these quantities here are between 800 and 2000. So we come and also save it. They told us to save it as between. That is okay. So we close off this one. Then the third criteria, or the third query, they have asked us to use a criteria that will display those whose quantity is below 1000. So we go and create the query. We create the query. Still we are dealing with the quantity. I add all the fields. The quantity is below 1000. For below we use the less than sign, like that one, below 1000. If you can, if you want to see, that is the sign. I can try to zoom it. I can zoom it and we see. So I can zoom it. I can take it to 18 so that you are able to see well. So it's less than 1000. Then when I run this one here, I must be able to get all those members whose quantity, all those items whose quantity is less than 1000. I also save this one as, they told us to save it as less than 1000, with, I mean below 1000. So we save that one. The next query is to display members or items that cost less than 1000. So we go to the cost, and this should be less than 1000. We go and create the query. We add the field, the table, add the fields, and then we come now to price, because they have told us the price. So we say less than 1000. Still we also write the less than sign, then 1000, and run. So you can now see here the price is indeed less than 1000. We've left the quantity, but we are now on the price. It's less than 1000. So we save this one as well. Save it as less than 1000. Then the next query is to display items that cost 700 and below. 700 and below, that means 700 inclusive. So we go and create. Remember this criteria, or this query wants even those that cost 700 to be inclusive, to be displayed. So we come and create, and we've said 700 and below. That means 700 is inclusive, and still we are dealing with the price. So we shall say less or equal to 700. That means 700 is inclusive. And if I can just zoom this, that's what we are talking about. Then I say okay, and we run. So if you can check here the price, only that it's unfortunate we don't have a price of 700, I'm so sure, but it is inclusive. Supposing we had here an item with 700, if I can just change this one to 700, if I can change it to 700, I refresh, then I go to the query and also refresh. It is now here displayed 700, so it's inclusive. I think that has been you have been able to see that. So we also come and save this one. We save it as 700 and below. That is our criteria for this query. We close it. We close. Then we also come to another query here that will display items whose price is more than 1,000. Save it as more than 1,000. So we go and create a query design, same steps, nothing to confuse us. We add the fields, and still on the unit price we're saying greater than 1,000. We run, and here the unit price you can see is greater than 1,000. So we also save this one. We say more than 1,000. Well, and then finally we have another criteria, items that cost exactly 1,500 exactly. So we come and create that criteria, we come and create that query, and still we add that table. Then we add all the fields in our we add the fields down here. Then we come to unit price. We said exactly, that means equals to 1,500, and then we run, and you can see all these ones actually cost 1,500. So this brings us to the end of this question, and I'm hopeful that everyone has been able to see what we have dealt with, or how we have dealt with those numbers right there. And that's how we deal with criterion that requires us to have the numbers. It's just the symbols, or we can use the words as well. So that is the end of this tutorial, and let's wait for the next tutorial and see what new thing we are going to be able to learn. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel with Julie Moses.